The Ides of March, 44 BC. Julius Caesar lay dead on the Senate floor. 23 stab wounds, the most powerful man in the world, brought down by the people he trusted most. But here's what the assassins didn't plan for. They thought killing Caesar would save the Republic. Instead, they had just lit the fuse on the greatest civil war Rome had ever seen. And when the smoke finally cleared, the Republic they died to protect would be gone forever. This is the story of how Rome's 500-year-old republic collapsed in just 13 years, and how one young, cold-blooded genius named Octavian turned chaos into an empire. The assassins, Brutus, Cassius, and 60 senators, walked out of the Senate that day expecting to be greeted as heroes. They were wrong. Rome didn't erupt in celebration. It erupted in panic. Shops closed. Citizens locked their doors. The Senate itself scattered in fear. Brutus tried to address the crowd. He gave a careful, reasoned speech about liberty and the Republic. The crowd listened in silence. Then Mark Antony stepped forward. Antony was Caesar's closest general, his most loyal friend. And on that day, he delivered what many historians consider the most devastating speech in Roman history. He didn't attack Brutus directly. He didn't call for revenge, not yet. Instead, he held up Caesar's bloodstained toga. He read Caesar's will aloud. Caesar had left money and land to every single Roman citizen. The crowd's silence turned to tears. Their tears turned to rage. Within hours, Rome was burning. Brutus and Cassius fled the city for their lives. The men who thought they had saved Rome had instead set it on fire. Now 3 men stood at the center of Rome's power struggle. Mark Antony, Caesar's greatest general, charismatic, fearless, commanding the loyalty of Rome's most battle-hardened legions. Marcus Lepidus, Rome's high priest and a man of enormous wealth, not a fighter, but a political survivor. And then there was Octavian, 19 years old, thin, often sick, with no military experience whatsoever. Caesar's adopted son and heir, a name on a will, nothing more. Or so everyone thought. Antony laughed at him, called him the boy, dismissed him as a political nobody who got lucky in a dead man's will. That was Antony's greatest mistake. Because Octavian wasn't relying on muscle. He was relying on something far more dangerous, his mind. He moved through Rome's political chaos with the patience of a chess grandmaster. He paid Caesar's promised gifts to the citizens from his own inheritance, buying loyalty 1 coin at a time. He recruited Caesar's veterans with a simple message: your general's blood demands justice. Within months, this boy had an army. Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian realized they needed each other, at least for now. In 43 BC, they formed the Second Triumvirate. 3 men, 1 deal. Divide the Roman world between them and destroy their enemies together. Their first act was brutal. They published a list, the prescriptions, hundreds of names, senators, knights, anyone who stood against them. Their property seized, their lives forfeit. Among the names on that list, Cicero, Rome's greatest orator, the voice of the Republic itself. Cicero had once called Octavian a boy to be used and discarded. Octavian didn't forget. Cicero was hunted down on a road outside Rome. His head and hands were cut off and nailed to the very rostrum in the Forum where he had given his greatest speeches. The Republic was bleeding out, and nobody was coming to save it. Meanwhile, Brutus and Cassius had fled east. They weren't hiding, they were building an army. 40,000 men, the last defenders of the Roman Republic. Antony and Octavian marched to meet them. In October 42 BC, the 2 armies clashed at Philippi in northern Greece. 2 battles in 3 weeks that would decide the fate of Rome. The first battle was almost a draw. Cassius, believing his side was losing, ordered his servant to kill him. He died before learning that his troops had actually won their flank. 3 weeks later, the second battle sealed everything. Brutus held his lines as long as he could. But Octavian and Antony's forces broke through. With his army collapsing around him, Brutus walked into his sword. The last defenders of the Republic were gone. But the real war, the war between Antony and Octavian, was only just beginning. After Philippi, the triumvirate divided the world. Octavian took the west, Rome itself, Italy, the heart of the empire. Antony took the east, the richest, most powerful half of the Roman world. And it was in the east that Antony met his destiny. Cleopatra. She had already seduced Julius Caesar. Now she turned her attention to Antony. And this time, it wasn't just politics. It was something deeper, something that would cost Antony everything. Antony abandoned his Roman wife, Octavia, who happened to be Octavian's sister. He moved to Alexandria. He had children with Cleopatra. He began giving away Roman territories as gifts to her and their sons. Back in Rome, Octavian watched and waited and worked. He fed the Roman public a steady stream of outrage. Antony had gone native. Antony had betrayed Rome. Antony wanted to move the capital to Alexandria. Antony bowed to an Egyptian queen. Romans had one great fear above all others, becoming servants to a foreign power. Octavian took that fear and turned it into a weapon. In 31 BC, Rome declared war. Not on Antony, officially Rome declared war on Cleopatra. It was a masterstroke of propaganda. Octavian wasn't fighting a Roman general. He was defending Rome from an Eastern queen. The two fleets met at the Battle of Actium off the coast of Greece. Cleopatra's ships broke through the blockade and fled south toward Egypt. Antony, seeing her leave, abandoned his own fleet and followed her. His men, betrayed, confused, leaderless, surrendered within days. It was over. Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Alexandria. They knew what was coming. When Octavian's forces arrived at the city's gates, Antony received a false report that Cleopatra was already dead. He fell on his own sword. He didn't die immediately. He was carried to Cleopatra's monument, where she was hiding. He died in her arms. Cleopatra survived him by only a few days. Rather than be paraded through Rome as a trophy in Octavian's triumph, she chose death. The exact method remains debated by historians, but the most enduring story is the one you already know. A snake, hidden in a basket of figs, the last queen of Egypt, gone. With Cleopatra dead and Antony gone, Octavian stood alone. He controlled every Roman legion, every province, every sea. He was 32 years old and he owned the world. But Octavian was too smart to make Caesar's mistake. Caesar had grabbed power openly. He had made enemies of the Senate, worn a crown in public, acted like a king, and he had died for it on the Senate floor. Octavian would do it differently. He gave power back to the Senate, on paper. He refused the title of king. He called himself simply the first citizen, princeps, the humble servant of Rome. The Senate, grateful and exhausted, gave him a new name, Augustus, the revered one. And just like that, without a coronation, without a crown, without ever calling himself emperor, Octavian became the first emperor of Rome. The republic that had stood for 500 years was over, not with a bang, not with a declaration, but with a quiet, careful lie that everyone agreed to believe. Rome would never be a republic again, but under Augustus it would become something greater than it had ever been. And that story, the empire at its absolute peak, is coming next. If this video moved you, if you felt the weight of what Rome lost and what it became, hit subscribe. Like this video. Turn on notifications, because we are just getting started. The greatest empire in human history still has so much left to tell. And trust me, you do not want to miss what comes next. This is MagicHist, and we don't just tell you what happened. We show you what could have been.